Today, I'm going to turn this oak slab into an iPad or recipe book holder that doubles up as 2 serving boards. The oak I have is a live edge slab that is 26mm thick and it's approximately 180 by 25 centimeters in size. I'm going to be making 3 of these recipe stands from this slab, and then the extra is going to be used for some more projects. These are an ideal handmade gift with Christmas coming up. These are actually going to my mum, who's given them as Christmas presents to a few friends after I made one for her last Christmas. What I'm doing here is just checking that my mitre saw is square after changing the blade for a brand new one. The end of this slab wasn't square, so I started by squaring up the end of it. I then marked out my dimensions and got these cut. I cut the larger board to 190mm by 325, and then I cut the smaller boards to 140mm by the width of the board. The smaller boards are going to have the grain running across them, and the larger boards, the wood grain, will go up the length. The smaller board length is the exact width of the slab, which is around 250mm. It's a live edge slab, so I can't be exact with these measurements. I then needed to cut the larger boards down in width, meaning I had to rip cut these. I don't have a table saw and I didn't want to get my track saw out, so I just cut these on the mitre saw. These additional pieces won't go to waste. They're going to be made into some bottle mounted glass holders in a future video, so here's a little sneak peek of them. These are the 2 pieces that we're left with. One is a square edge and the smaller one with the live edge. The smaller one will fit through a slot that will cut in the larger ones. To cut this, I'll be using a router with a straight cutting bit, but first there's a little bit more prep. I removed the bark from the live edge and cleaned this up with a chisel. I then marked out the line for the hole that's going to be cut in the larger board. This hole is around 150mm by 36, which is wide enough for the smaller board to slide into when they slot together. I mounted this piece of MDF to the workbench to stop me cutting into the bench when plunging the router bit through the oak. I made a template for cutting the slot out by attaching some offcuts of wood to my workbench to use as stops and guides. This just allows me to use the wood to run the router along, and then it stops in the correct place. I just moved the board to cut the next groove, but I could have added another piece of scrap wood to make a full router template. I will probably do this next time as it'll just make life a little bit easier. With those cuts made, I kept the router out and I finished each board using a roundover on all of the edges. Any small knot holes were filled with CA glue, which I absolutely refuse to call CA glue because everyone knows it's just super glue and woodworkers are just trying to make it sound posh. Either that or super glue is a British name and any Americans watching this are just going to be slightly confused by this rant. But anyway, back to the project. After the holes were filled, I hand sanded the inside of each handle slot, then remembered that I'd recently bought a Dremel tool, so I used that to make life much easier. I then sanded each board up to 120 grit. These are getting oiled, so there's no need to go any further than that. As you can see, the knot holes remain visible but completely smooth with the super glue sanded. I've used epoxy resin in the past for doing this, but that would have meant leaving each one of these to dry overnight before continuing, whereas with an activator the super glue dries within seconds. As you can see, the smaller board slots into the larger one and creates an edge to stand an iPad or a cookbook onto. The final step was to oil these using Danish Oil, which I applied using a small sponge. So, I'm not going to lie, when recording the voiceover for this, I genuinely forgot the name for a sponge and embarrassingly had to Google wash foam cloth to remember it, but you know, let's not tell anybody that. I apply a generous coat and then leave it for about half an hour to soak in and then buff off any excess. I added these felt pads onto the larger board to give it some protection when being used as a serving board. With that done, the stand and the serving boards were complete. These make a really great gift for anyone into cooking, and they're fairly cheap and easy to make. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's free to do so and it does massively help the channel grow. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.